Hello there! Welcome back to Charles Circle, and welcome back to Captain of Industry. Last time, we built out the rail network for our new and improved farming system. Along the way, we also built the mill, which processes all of our wheat and sugarcane, and spun up half a dozen chicken farms. The food rework is really coming along. So today, I'd like to push us across the finishing line on the farming revamp. That might be an aggressive goal, but there's only one way to find out. So, let's get into it. So, for today's to-dos. In planning for this episode, I was struggling with sequencing a bit, trying to decide what made the most sense to build next. I've mentioned a few times that we're dealing with this dynamic that's typical in big, interdependent projects, where Part A can't be fully built until you fully build Part B, and building Part B requires Part C already, which can't get started until you build Part A. I've been shorthanding it by saying you can't build anything until you build everything. But then it hit me. What if we did just build everything? So today, we build everything. Don't worry, it looks like a lot, but they're mostly small builds, and I've sketched them out for the most part already as well. So we'll talk about each of them in more detail once we get to them, but the goal is that once this list is done, we should be ready to build a modular settlement. So let's start at the top and maybe work our way down. Okay, so let's start out here with the Junkyard. What is it? Why do we need it? Why build it here? So what is it? I have obliquely referenced this a couple times, but it's basically, in my mind, rail accessible garbage disposal. So we make all these byproducts. In food processing, like out here, we have all this biomass coming off our food processors, making sugar out of sugarcane, right? There are a few other locations that are like that. But also, as we think about a modular settlement, we are going to be putting off a decent amount of biomass from the settlement, along with waste and recyclables, and sludge from the wastewater treatment plant water recycling loop. As a reminder, we said we are going to do this part on site, but we'll have to bring in the ingredients and dispose of the byproducts by rail. Just it's so efficient and high volume, it would be very silly to transport all of that. So that means we need somewhere to accept biomass and sludge via rail. So we handle both of those things today, but not via rail. So this is a new requirement for our base. So that's what this does. So out here, we have biomass comes in and it gets turned into compost. This is something that we can extend pretty much infinitely, functionally at least. As much capacity as we need to add in the future, we certainly can, and that's true of really all of these processing modules, you'll see in a moment. So the compost comes out here, goes along this belt, and we'll talk about how we handle it in a moment, but we generate a little bit more compost by processing also the sludge. This is one I can guarantee you we're going to have to add more modules to, but let's start with just this for now. So sludge, of course, we turn into fuel gas and compost. There's really nothing else productive to do with that, so it's pretty straightforward. We export the fuel gas here. This is going to need to be prioritized out to really the only place that we accept fuel gas via rail right now is refueling all of our turbine trains. We pull a little bit of that fuel gas from the contract area as necessary to do that, so hopefully we're able to instead prioritize this source. If we need to add another place to accept fuel gas via rail, like, we can definitely do that. It's no problem. We do use quite a bit of hydrogen. I'm sure we can add more capacity. But for now, that's the plan. It'll just fuel the trains that are going to be running this whole network. The compost from that step meets up with the compost from this step, as well as any compost we might bring in via rail. I don't see us structurally generating any right this second, but I could see it happening, and I'd hate to have to slot this in later, so we're just going to do it proactively. All of that compost then comes over here. What do we do with compost? Well, if we're not going to turn it into organic fertilizer, we're going to turn it into dirt. So dirt, of course, we will then export via our landfill network to the contract port and turn it into even more fuel gas. So if we're going to do that, though, this requires gravel. And gravel is easy enough to make. It does mean that we'll need to request a bit of rock in this area as well, and then crush it down into an equal volume of gravel. If we're already going to be making gravel on site, though, one of the other things that we need to get onto rail that we make today but don't have on rail yet is filter media. right? We're going to have to deliver the ingredients, also including chlorine. We'll come back to that. We're going to have to deliver the ingredients for the wastewater treatment plant as well. So since we're already here, and since we're already going down to the gravel step, one of the simplest ways to make filter media is to take a good chunk of that gravel, take another chunk of it and grind it one step further into manufactured sand, add just the tiniest bit of coal, and there you go. You've got filter media. I'm also imagining this potentially supplying where we need filter media, for example, out here, right? And when we move centralized gold processing onto this island in the future, I think that's still a plan. We'll also need to bring out some more too. So that also tees up why this location, right? So this is where we are going to be, sort of the center of gravity of where we're going to be both producing and consuming all this stuff. Planning a settlement roughly there, one roughly there. That's, of course, a decent chunk of our generation and where we need to supply this stuff. We're also going to be building, as you can see, not just the single factory that we already have built on food processing, but there's a few others, and they're all going to generate their own byproducts, and they're all pretty much on St. Charles. So this felt like the center of gravity, but out of the way and expandable because, yeah, I could see us needing quite a bit of capacity for some of this stuff. So that's why here. The thing you might be asking yourself, notably not processed here, are trash and recyclables. I'd initially been imagining them as part of this single facility, but instead we're going to process them in a different facility for reasons of location as well. So let's get this building, and then we can glance at those two locations, which we aren't going to prioritize quite yet because they're settlement specific, not just also the food processing stuff. So we're going to do those last. We are going to do them. But let's let our trucks start to chip away on this, and I'll show you the other spots. So when we think about how we're going to handle our waste, of course, we're going to do this at an incineration plant, same as we do today at our existing settlement. Why would we do it any differently? So in order to run an incineration plant, of course, we have to drop off the waste. We are going to compress it at the settlement to reduce the transport volume. And the neat thing about an incineration plant is it doesn't care. It can handle the pressed or the trash, the shredded version, I guess, or the uncompacted version. But in order to run an incineration plant, you need fuel gas and you need water. And you're going to produce exhaust and steam. Boy, would it be nice if we had a location that conveniently already had fuel gas and water accessible with a bit of spare exhaust processing capacity, because this is a decent amount and it will add up, and a productive spot to absorb steam high. Well, that location has like none of those things. Some local fuel gas generation, no water necessarily, definitely no exhaust scrubbers, and definitely nowhere to really absorb any steam. But the refinery, especially next to the oil power plant, definitely does, right? So, of course, we generate fuel gas here as part of our basic refining process, really, right? As well as a good amount of the cracking that we do here. Plenty of water. We're coastal. We have desalination. And we have exhaust scrubbing with quite a good amount, 80% free capacity here. And we can absorb the steam high here, either in the oil power turbine itself, or even if we don't end up using that in the long run, or if it's not spinning up on auto balance, we have to run the thermal desalinator. We have to run the two boilers that are keeping the whole refinery moving. So hopefully, and let's see how this all plays out balance-wise, but hopefully that's a pretty good use for all of this steam high. So we'll keep an eye on that, but we'll just basically connect that up to this sort of steam network, along with the water network, and siphon off all the fuel gas that we can. As you see, that will mean taking it away from our power plant. I think that's going to be fine, especially if we're replacing it with some steam high. So like I said, we aren't going to build this until we're basically ready otherwise to build the settlement itself, because it adds capacity we aren't immediately going to use. Over here, we are immediately going to start disposing of the biomass, so that's worth starting. The other thing is recyclables, so let's talk about that real quick. I ended up just making a sorting plant, essentially. So again, this is going to accept all of the compressed recyclables that we generate out at a settlement, right? Over here, we'll squish everything down, and that'll reduce transport volumes. I was trying to decide, do we want a single recyclables processing center, sort of like this, but expanded and actually capable of handling the volume and breadth of all of those different products? But I was sort of thinking about it, and I realized, like, we already have the capacity, it just happens to be distributed, right? Like, this is handling all of our recycled copper just fine, and we have room to expand it if we want. Once we're done with all of the local iron and the iron across the way over there on Isla Tres, this will have nothing to do but handle recycled iron, and that's the plan for it anyway once we get our new steel factory spun up. So we could just sort it all and then send it out to the various plants, including even hooking up our gold production to rail. That's luxury goods in a moment. And eventually, of course, we'll also get aluminum out here, and glass is the one thing that we don't actually have set up just yet. We could send it out to Silicon Ridge. We could also turn this location back into a glass-only processing area. It's doing a good amount of that now already, as you can see from the recyclables. At any rate, this is sort of my thought. I think this is going to be our model for recyclables in the long term, a sorting plant that then distributes the bits back out. And as a result, we will compress them back down to reduce transit volumes and have to shred them again on site. But I think this is like the one time I've ever actually played where this makes some sense to do, all of this compacting and shredding. So I'm just kind of excited to try it out that way. So again, this we won't build, same as the incineration plant. This is just unnecessary capacity until we're actually ready for the settlement, so we'll skip over that for now. But I wanted to sort of round out the thought while we're building all of this. All right, well, I had a bunch of Unity and was feeling impatient, so I just quickly built everything. We are, of course, underwater on workers, so we are going to have to go ahead and upgrade our last Housing 3 to a Housing 4. Yikes. But if we... Nope, we've already unloaded the crew, and our research centers are all paused, so we are right on the edge with people, unfortunately. But this is all going. We now need to add a few train networks to access it. So the farming one is the one that I think will probably handle the biomass, and then we'll need to get the landfill disposal network on here for dirt export and rock import, as well as, I guess, the farming network will handle the fuel gas export, and then we need to get coal out here, which will be a St. Charles manufacturing network thing. Goodness. All right, let me add all those. Pretty sure that's right. Let's adjust. I'm sure there's going to be some overlap that we don't ultimately want, but let's see how it behaves before we worry about adjusting its behavior. As you can see, we already get some coal coming in. The dirt, we'll want to keep empty. Same with the fuel gas. Everything else is more accept than request, really. The rock we do need to actively request along with the coal. So let's get over here and make sure that we have our biomass pushed out along with our animal feed pushed out over here for the farming network. And we've got our first bits of filter media being produced out here now too. Great to see. I've got an alert over here though that I'm not a huge fan of at our fertilizer factory. So here's what's been going on. We make enough of this longer run, right? We've got still plenty for export, but the issue, as always, is the pulse nature of all of this, meaning that we do drain over here. And the issue is we've done a good job, I think, with this sulfur working buffer, and this is even fine, although I'm going to make a change in a moment to make it even better. The issue is actually fundamentally we're limited by ammonia. And of course, the ammonia comes from not just the occasional convenient truck drop-off, but primarily the sour water processing. As you can see, the sour water processing is giving us plenty of sulfur, but not quite enough ammonia. And if you recall, back in the day when we built this, all of what, like 2-3 episodes ago now, we said we were going to use hydrogen out here because if we ever needed extra ammonia, we had a whole bunch of nitrogen we could mix with that hydrogen right here that we're otherwise venting. So I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and sneak in a supplemental chemical plant over here to make some, and make one adjustment over here that I'd love to credit actually a viewer for. So let me hop in and then I'll explain it all. Man, I hate pipe wrangling sometimes, but I think this works. All right, so let's talk about it, and let's just quickly get it moving, clear out a bit of oxygen. So we'll have to make sure that that stays balanced in the longer run. But the idea here is basically we're going to be venting nitrogen otherwise, so let's prioritize sending it out here to be turned into ammonia using some hydrogen. And that ammonia is going to come out here. Yep, I think that's right. And be deprioritized, but backfill any gaps in our sour water generated ammonia. I've also made one change over here. I was way overcomplicating things last time with this working buffer insertion. The point of a working buffer is always just to go to the actual machines that are going to consume it. So it doesn't need to feed back into the balancer. It should just feed directly into the machines themselves. And similarly, there's no reason for anything that comes through this balancer can just pass right through the working buffer, right? So I've disconnected and made simpler rather than cycling a bunch of ammonia back around. All ammonia just comes out here and goes through the buffer and into the machines. We leave room always for a bit to be brought in by truck. And then if and only if all of that is full and backed up, then do we overflow a bit out for export, which will become relevant actually pretty soon. So credit to Rafka for making that suggestion in our Discord. I love it when someone comes in with a simplification. It's like, yes, thank you. I knew this was too complicated. I was making it too complicated. Let's fix it. But as you can see, that is getting this moving again, which is nice. More green is good. And that means that all of this is going, and we're gonna run down our sulfur. Now, we do still fundamentally, right, have a sour water throughput issue here. And our interim solution of a bit more storage here has helped but not solved. So this is definitely still something we're going to have to think about getting a bigger dock for, probably sooner rather than later, but not right this moment. All right, so this looks like it's working just fine. We've actually got our first biomass shipment coming in here shortly. So I think it is time to call this good. Take a peek at it, of course, as the episode progresses, but it's time to move on to the next build, which is the pharmacy. The pharmacy is medical supplies. So we're going to make medical supplies 1 and 2 here. Longer run, there's a 3. I haven't decided whether we're gonna also make that here, Right now we're just going to solve for 2. This, as a reminder, is for 2 different things. 1, providing these to the settlement, as we do with medical supplies 1 today for some unity and some health, but it is also 2 for the creation of crew supplies, which is going to be an important part of our space program. So that's a milestone, actually, that we've been tracking down here under space stuff. So it'll be nice to check off something in that category here as well. So let's talk about how we're going to make that. It starts with medical supplies, the basic ones. So easy enough. We know how to do that. Easy enough. The other new piece that we'll have to worry about is antibiotics. Antibiotics are made in a fermentation tank, and they take sugar, ammonia, as I just mentioned, something we're going to have to actually be producing or bring in here now, and some oxygen. And it creates antibiotics and carbon dioxide. Fun thing about a fermentation tank, and sugar, and oxygen, is that you can also, in the same setup with the same hookups and supplies, create ethanol. And even the same byproduct that you're going to dump into the atmosphere anyway. The thing about ethanol is we kind of need it to make disinfectant, which is a key input into medical supplies 1. And the other thing that we need is some plastic. And the cool thing about plastic is you can also make it from ethanol. So starting with sugar, we can actually make a pretty good chunk of what we need. So that's what we're going to do here. We'll import a ton of sugar. We will also bring in a bit of ammonia. A little bit worried about this part yet. There's a chance we may have to pivot to producing some somewhere else synthetically, but let's at least set it up like this for now. We're also going to have to bring in some chlorine via rail, something to come back to, and steel, easy enough. We're actually going to export some plastic from here because we're going to need plastic on rail for some other things that we'll talk about eventually. And then, of course, the medical supplies themselves. I like this location. It's relatively central. It's relatively, I would say, central for both import and export purposes. Again, sort of thinking about where at least our first 2 settlements are going to be. We can make the crew supplies really anywhere, and it's pretty low volume. So it's really just what's our biggest volume import, right? Sugar. It's not so far. And where's a lot of this going? So I think this is the right location. I am going to move it a bit further this way, though. Our big, long farming trains bring in a ton of sugar at a time are otherwise going to stick out onto the main line here. But in order to do so, I'm going to have to move all of our water generation stuff here. So wanted to first walk through the build before knocking all of that over. So to quickly trace it, the sugar, our big main ingredient, comes out here and goes into this row of fermentation tanks. This should be sufficient, but there's definitely room to add more if we need. These do both things, which is great. We can actually do both recipes here. So primarily we're going to make antibiotics, but they're going to back up because we will need to make everything else, right, for our medical supplies 2 to actually get moving. So anytime we need ethanol, then these guys will default to cranking that stuff out instead. I'd rather do it this way than the other way because otherwise the ethanol, like solving for ethanol production, could mean we get caught up in basically just getting pulled all the way through to plastic. And I'd rather the plastic export be like something that we get around to when everything else is sorted, but only then. So the ethanol comes out here into a working buffer, which will continue on. And then the antibiotics come out on this flat belt and merge up out here to the final step, the assembly for our medical supplies too. There's some CO2 that also gets vented out here in this smokestack. Not quite worth it, in my opinion, to try to capture it and turn it into graphite and everything, so I'm just gonna let that go, but that will be a decent source of CO2. And if we ever need to go hunting for graphite, that'll be at the top of our list, or among the top of our list. The ethanol, as I said, really critical for the rest of this. Comes out, branches off a couple different directions. Here's the polymerization plant, where we're going to make all of our plastic. There's two of them. They also need an exhaust hookup here. Good news, there's one right there, so I'll do that. And the rest of the ethanol passes along here to the chem plant 2 making the disinfectant. It also receives some of this plastic, right? And there's a balancer here. Let's say that we prioritize the continuation on to the different medical supplies components before allowing any excess overflow to come out here for export. So then out here, we take that plastic and mix it up with some steel, right, that we're importing along this belt here. And that makes medical equipment. Medical equipment, and we need 2 of these to hit the ratio 12 plus 12, 24, right, for the medical supplies 1 assembly. And we crank that all out over here. Finally, we make our medical supplies 2. So if I have one concern with this build, it's scalability. There's just a lot of interconnected modules here. It's kind of hard to do perfect scalability here. I think we're going to be okay though. If I look at how much we need over here, it's the same for med supplies 2. 24 is our total demand, and these are not additive. So we need 24 today. We have the ability here to make twice as many, and that would take us almost all the way up to 10K. The crew supplies are not super high volume, although of course we do actually have to produce them in a binary sense. And we can always just supplement with some med supplies 1 if we need to. Of course, we have to produce that somewhere too, but it's something to keep in mind. So I think this is going to be okay at least for a long time. It's just not the usually perfectly future-proof approach that I would prefer to aim for, but it'll work, and there's still plenty of room to adjust in here. So I'm going to hop in, as I said, delete and rebuild. We still need to tap this reservoir somewhere, but, you know, out of the way. And slide this a little bit further in and connect up a rail output. Probably have to swing back around and meet up out that way or something. So let me take care of all of that real quick. All right, I think this works. Let's go ahead and get everything in motion here. And I think at least these more important bits of infrastructure get Unity built. I will say I really am not in love with the set of pipes here. I'm going to prioritize it right now, but something for an aesthetics focused section or episode, I think, for sure. All right, so again, some Unity and a big pile of construction parts later, we are built. Hey, by the way, I've had to switch our wheat back to be primarily animal feed again because our chicken farms are running low. Shocker. But we'll cross our fingers that that sorts itself out. So, of course, we're still waiting for our groundwater pumps, but otherwise everything else is pretty much in place here, which is good to see. So we need to get, of course, some train networks servicing the area. Steel we can do with our local manufacturing network, and farming will be the network to bring in the sugar. We actually are not going to be able to kick this off because we don't have the chlorine yet. Let's come back to that in a moment. And the same farming network, I actually think will be able to handle the ammonia too. We should have a liquid train to handle that. But I am a little worried about the volumes there. We don't need a ton of volume here, but we need a large volume to trigger running such a train. That's one of the reasons I've done too deep on these smaller items, just because as we've run into a few times, you need to have a pretty significant amount of empty storage to run one of our larger trains, or to get the network to bother running one of our larger trains. All right, so I'm going to add networks to the station. That's all for now. Let's do chlorine real quick, though. So chlorine is something that we already produce over here in decent enough volumes, and this electrolyzer barely even runs anymore. It's an electrolyzer 1, it's not even the upgraded version, and it's just so often full. We barely run this, and it's got, I'm pretty sure, yeah, a decent amount of brine that we're otherwise dumping. So this feels like the right thing to do, is to just slap it in over here, right next to where our trash station is going to be. That'll require us to build some more rail, and then we'll need to get this onto a network, probably the manufacturing network, although that'll mean we need a liquid train. So let me hop in and take care of all of that. All right, and all the way down to we need another train here. I think we are done. We happen to have a few of these guys. I've had to prune them back as we've taken away some of their jobs, but I've kept the engines. Not that it's a huge deal. You can always make them again, get the parts back, but we've got a couple already ready, which is nice. So this should get going here shortly, but we'll keep an eye on it. And oh nice, steel's on its way. The sugar is also on its way. Very good. The ammonia is going to be our bigger deal. And you know what we could do, since we've got a liquid train already on the manufacturing network, I suppose if we added this to the manufacturing network, it would trigger running an ammonia train earlier than it would require this whole thing. So let's do that real quick. I think that'll help. We'll find out. Also been running this a pretty good amount. I even boosted it, and my goodness, it's keeping up 100% boosted. We are draining the hydrogen if we end up doing this. Like right now, it's to regenerate a buffer, and we'll see how things go when it backs up. But ultimately, if we need to do this at higher scale, I'm thinking we may need to bring in hydrogen via train, because our trucks are doing this right now, and they're quite busy with it. And if this needs to be boosted 24/7, that just means we need a second machine. So we'll keep an eye on this, but there's a decent chance we have to scale this. Let's come back to it. And yep, just as we'd hoped, actually, that's getting ammonia in here a little bit faster than we otherwise would have gotten. So happy to see that. And does that even mean, yeah, we're still waiting on the chlorine, because without chlorine, there's no plastic. But yeah, these guys are at least starting to crank out the antibiotics. Plenty of sugar, even more arriving as we speak. So cool, this is good to see. There's plenty to work on here, filling up our ethanol buffer and so on and so forth in the meanwhile until the chlorine arrives. But everything's built out here now as well, so this really is just a matter of when a train can get out here. I've made sure to say only output above 100 so that if our trucks do need to come in here, right, and grab some, because we do still via truck supply some other places, that has to remain a possibility. So we'll do that, but I think this will end up being a decent amount of chlorine for us. We could stop. How much is this? Yeah, this is like never running salt anymore. We basically provide all the salt we need out on Yellow Trace. Let's just prioritize the chlorine for now. This probably will not run anywhere close to 100%, but let's make sure that all of the brine that is coming out this way goes to this electrolyzer. The animal feed shipment is arriving, which is great because all of our chickens are dead. Yeah, that's a bummer. Well, not all of them, I suppose. So, lesson learned. We definitely do need to, at least in the short term, keep prioritizing animal feed production out here at our wheat farms. The good news is we barely need like any sugarcane, despite all the sugar that we're currently using now for ethanol and everything. One cycle here. Otherwise, all of these farms are wheat and soybeans, and we're just having all of it go to animal feed. Let's see if that's enough to sustain it. If we really have to allocate these farms full time to chicken farm feed, that'll be a bummer. We'll just make more farms, no big deal. But we are going to end up making more and more animal feed from byproduct, for example, out here and a bunch of other spots, hopefully. So I think that takes care of itself in the longer run, and we're okay on all the other sort of opportunity cost trade-offs, right? We have plenty of flour, so it's not like we need the wheat for that for anything right yet. As I said, we're still doing plenty on the sugar front as well. Look at all that sugarcane built up here. So I think we'll be okay longer run, but it's going to be hard to find the balance for the whole thing until it's actually all sorted properly. Things look okay out here though. Looks like we're getting all that biomass crushed down and turned into dirt, so happy to see that. Check it out. Our first med supplies too are rolling in. As you can imagine, that does mean we got some chlorine out here, which is great to see. And as much as I would love to immediately supply these to our existing settlement, can't, because that's not how linked stations work anymore. So that's a bummer, but I would like to do that because actually we've got a bit of a blip in supply out here, which is recovering, but is 100% a plastic input issue, actually. The ethanol and naphtha that we currently supply comes from our meager, initial farm set and a rapidly diminishing amount of naphtha byproduct. We are simply not running as much as we maybe used to out here. We're running at about 50% across the board for this refinery as we shift away from a diesel-oriented fuel economy and ever further into the hydrogen direction of things. But that's not a problem. It's just something to adapt to over time. Well, with Med Supplies 2 rolling in, I think it's fair to say that we have completed the pharmacy, which means it's time for the bakery. The bakery, as you can imagine, turns flour into bread and also cake. And it's out here. I guess this just felt like a decent location, like right off the main spur for supplying bread, which is going to be our most important food. As we are very familiar, it's quite efficient, and as a result, that's going to be a pretty important thing for us to be supplying to our various settlements. The other thing that we make at a bakery, though, because bread is just water and flour, we also use the same flour to make cake. Now, cake requires a handful of other things. Good news, we just set up sugar. We did manage to get a good number of eggs before all of our chickens died. We have the ability to make cooking oil, although we haven't actually squeezed any out yet because our soybeans have gone directly to animal feed and haven't slotted in canola just yet, although I think it's probably time to do that. And then we will need to set up farms for fruit. But once we have all of that, we'll be able to make cake. So that's the idea here. It's relatively expandable, I would say. This is probably going to be as much as we need, but this is, I would say, pretty straightforward. And there's a rail loop, obviously, surrounding the build. It only needs to come in from the two highways, essentially, is how I think about this. We don't need a train to be able to come in from this direction. It would just be coming from here or able to go back around anyway. So I'm trying to keep it minimum messy here, although obviously there's quite a bit of rail mess already. At any rate, I think I'm going to build all this. Probably not, maybe just one of each of these buildings to start, and even that'll be aspirational since we don't have the fruit just yet, or the oil. Maybe we'll just make one bakery. But yeah, I'll get this going. So that's the build. I just went full Unity because we're sitting on a ton of it. Our trucks are super busy. One thing I didn't mention, but of course had to do, was connect up the water supply. Everything else just flows right out of a train station or right back into one. This is awkward and gonna get redone. Spoiler alert, when we get into this build, we're gonna have to redo some of the train entrances here anyway, but no matter what, the water is going to have to pass through this set of buildings. It's an input for a few of them, and it'll connect up to this water main. So just some tidying work yet to be done here, but otherwise it will maintain a connection. So we need to get this, of course, onto some networks. I think it's just the farming network, isn't it? Ultimately, for supplying the end products directly to a settlement, we can have a conversation about the best way to do that. But right now, we're just bringing in flour, eggs, sugar, and hopefully soon, cooking oil and fruit. So let's just throw this onto that network and see if that triggers anything for us helpful. Yeah, so sugar, eggs, immediately on their way. Let's maybe take a peek out here. I mean, I think it's probably time to just sneak in a little bit of canola and swap out the soybeans. This was, I think, just sort of wishful thinking on my part that we'd be able to get soybeans to be a meaningful contributor here. If the whole point is just to get them to turn to animal feed, well, let's just do that directly out here at the source. But so let's, in this same one, maybe? Yeah. Is that how we want to do this? Let me give it some thought. All right, yeah, so here's what we're going to do. We are going to send canola out here. I've added a station. We'll have to siphon it off here. The reason I was hesitant at all in the first place is canola's a little awkward in that you can't turn the excess into anything, really. You can't even digest it into fuel gas, right? You literally have to just burn it off for pollution if you're not going to turn it into cooking oil and animal feed. Now, if you really want to avoid burning it off, what you can do is turn it into cooking oil and then turn that cooking oil into gasoline, diesel, with a bit of ethanol, but that's pretty awkward to do. So hopefully we can titrate our cooking oil production and make sure that we're not making more than we need. And this may, in the longer run, involve toggling, whether we're making any out here for a while or not. I hope that's not the case. We can have decent sized buffers, and we will of course be consuming it, right? We wouldn't make it if not, but I'd rather not be burning ethanol essentially to awkwardly have to consume some excess here. At any rate, we need it, so we're gonna make it. I think we're gonna start small, and maybe what we'll do, this will be our other stuff greenhouse, and we'll slot some in here too, and that way it's only 1/4 of one farm. We might need to add more than that, to be clear. I'm just trying to approach that limit from the bottom rather than overshooting. So let me go in here and add in the sorter, connect up, out, and get this all in motion. All right, so then what we will want to do, I'm gonna say, let me know if this is ever full. And we will need to make an adjustment over on the receiving end here. This is no longer for soybeans. This is canola, as is this and this. And we already have the recipes in place. Really, just for the sake of completion, we can remove this last one from all of these mills. I suppose we should, but it really makes no impact. So hopefully we'll have our first bits of canola rolling out here and oil soon. So over here, then we should have, yeah, everything but fruit, basically, then supplied once that's sorted out. Fruit, of course, means we'll need to add some more farms. Got a bit distracted by a blip in our fuel gas, hydrogen, landfill economy, but everything is good now. It was basically just a, what did we happen to be running through in mines recently? Good problem to have, actually. We're going through this too pure section of the iron mine. So all sorted, nothing really to solve, but it was a good prompt, a good reminder that I wanted to implement another optimization suggested by a viewer, this time by Violet, also in our Discord. Violet pointed out that we are on occasion bottlenecked at our unloads for a couple of these stations. I think primarily rock is where I've seen it most impactful. And the issue essentially is the following. So our trains come in with a full load, 1920, something like that, just short of 2K, and they go to unload. And the unload speed of a single train station is 600. That happening in parallel is enough to basically do a whole train in under a minute, right? But what happens is the actual buffer size of the stations themselves becomes a limiter, and the 240x4, right, that we need is half the train. And so the first half of the train unloads basically instantaneously. It's fantastic. And then it moves forward and it goes to unload the second half. But what happens is that the throughput of these stations is 600 each. The drain, though, once these are full, the drain is a single belt at 450, right? And so what we basically do is we get through the first 2/3 of a 2K train with no problem. And then that last third becomes a slow bottleneck where our throughput goes from being 2400, 600 x4 to 450, which is obviously a much smaller number, right? And that's not a huge deal in a vacuum at first, although it is definitely slower. Where it really becomes an issue, though, is everything I just said assumes that these stations are empty from the start. And if we've got traffic, we've got a handful of trains all lined up, there's no guarantee that these stations are going to be fully empty by the time the next train comes in. Then that train sits in the bottleneck phase the entire time, right? And goes to be limited at 450 for the entire duration. And so dwell time can really exponentially increase, specifically, particularly in those moments where we have high traffic, which is exactly when we want those dwell times to not be high. So it's as simple as, I think, just adding a single extra belt will probably be helpful. Again, it's pretty neat that like a single belt can drain all of these, but I do think we need some more throughput. So the fun part is we actually can just use the same station, I believe, and this is now twice the throughput on the input side, and we do need to make sure that coming out also, we are able to come down here and probably dump somewhere towards the end of the manifold, I would say. The other issue, though, right, for unload is that we fill up here and then here and then here, and we work our way down. And as a result, right, like this thing's full here, but waiting on the last couple. So I'll try to set up a second belt, go from here down to like here, but I'll try to make it more aesthetic. 1 second. Could be better, could be worse. It's effective. I think that's the point. Slag, I think, probably has a similar issue, and I'm I'm going to try to change that real quick too. Dirt shouldn't be as much of a problem, although it probably also is slightly. I think that should be okay. The manual slag drop-off should be okay with these last two, and the manifold, I would imagine, balancing out, and this drain should be far enough down. At any rate, this is one of those things where, man, if I hadn't painted us into such a corner here, and to be fair, if we had more room to work with at the time, we were dealing with pushing this ridge back, we'd be able to make these adjustments a little bit easier, but something tells me this won't be the last version of this port that we end up building, so something to keep in mind for version 3, Mark 3 of the contract export port when it ends up being time to do that. So far so good though. We are continuing to bounce back here. A bit of a digression, but one worth doing. Alright, well we were supposed to be talking about farms though, because we need to get some fruits in here so that we can get the cake production rolling. Canola is starting to roll in. I'm adding it actually a couple more places. I definitely do think we underestimated how much we'll need at least to build up a buffer. Let's find out. So let's talk farms, because there's two sets of farms that I actually want to build today. And like I said, I think last time, 2 times ago, can't remember, the logic for how we're pairing these up is that, well, we need to alternate crops at a farm to avoid the fertility penalty. And all else equal, it'd be nice to have types of crops together that work nicely together. So corn and potatoes work nicely together because they're both loose goods. They both get shipped directly to the settlement. They both get shipped or can be shipped to a snack production facility. And they both can overflow into animal feed production. So these will be paired together at one set of farms. And over here, fruits and veggies are going to match up at a different set of farms together. They're both flat goods, and we send them both directly to the settlement as raw crops, and a couple other one-off spots. Fruits, as we obviously just mentioned, can get sent to the bakery for cake. Veggies actually can be used as a component in the space crew supplies, the food packs, right? And as a result, I think these sort of match nicely together. And once we have these two sets of farms set up, we'll have the ingredients at least to send all of this stuff directly to a settlement on rail. We still need to make tofu, but we have soybeans, and we still need to make snacks, but we will have those key ingredients as well. So where are we going to set up these two new farming outposts? As we mentioned, we are solving for easy access to local water, and sort of being next to the rail line already is bonus points. It's easier to source the water locally in most cases, rather than send a long pipeline or train it, for example. So out here is actually, in theory, a pretty solid farming spot. I wouldn't be shocked if some folks on this map already have pretty heavy farming setups out here. We're not going to do that though, because this reservoir, well, we're draining it right now, although in general, our reservoir on St. Charles is okay. We are simply balancing around which one happens to be losing at the time, and the rest are sort of balancing it out. But I do want this one to primarily feed into the settlement, right? And this will be a decent amount of water that we will have to source pretty much here locally. So I don't know that I really want to add another set of farms right in this area. And while we will have rail connected eventually, obviously, to connect to the settlement itself, we don't yet. And this is another interesting area, potentially. We obviously already have farms here. There's the convenient component of being connected both to our water and fertilizer. And we may yet keep some of these for one purpose or another, but I don't know. It feels a little silly to do a big farming expansion that is built around keeping the same set of farms. And also, we can't really stop producing these other things until we're ready to connect up to the settlements, all of them via rail. So I think these are going to be the last thing, cleaning this up is going to be the last thing that we end up doing for this overhaul in general. So decided against these, at least for now. could see us adding something in this area eventually. Plus, don't we want to run rail, like right here? Feels like that's the spot for it. Anyways, we could try to squeeze something in out here. This is a fine reservoir for now. Wasn't feeling it. So we're gonna get some farms out here on Silicon Ridge. And I didn't want to overdo it out here because this is a very healthy, sizable reservoir, right? 30K, pretty solid, but it does feed in a pretty spiky way all of this industry and our nuclear power plant. So the nuclear power plant is primarily fed up over here, which does all right. And since everything's kind of connected via water main, I feel like okay. So I think it's all right to add one set of farms here, but probably not two. There was a version I was sketching out where we had one here and then one over here. I just don't know. That was going to be another pipeline situation. That just felt like too much to add here too quickly, especially when you consider that one of our other settlements is going to be here, and that'll be direct water draw as well. So one set of farms here. Which one is it? Let's talk about it real quick. This is maize and taters. This is where we're going to grow our corn, our maize, and our potatoes, our taters. So we are going to simply, once I actually update this, whoops, we are going to simply alternate between the two out here. And I think that'll be okay ratio-wise. We're going to find out. I think there's a world where we end up having too many potatoes, not enough corn. That's my bet. And if that's the case, maybe we'll start alternating in some third crop just to allow us to go higher proportion corn. Anyway, we'll figure it out. But that's the goal of this area, is to maximize corn and potato production. We have plenty of room here to add other stations if we decide to add other crops. There's room with some terraforming, potentially, to add another set over here. So expandable, but not immediately. So we're going to bring in, as I said, fertilizer. We are going to have to connect up water, right? But the good news is that this is literally touching the reservoir. So I think what we'll do is actually just slap one, probably two, over here directly, and then just connect up to this pipe here. So I'll do that real quick before I forget. And there we go. So this is now supplied, or will be once we get the fertilizer out here and the rail connection. Put this on to that same farming network. As before, we're going to do our little overflow trick where we prioritize our crops out. At least that's the long-term plan for our wheat setup as well, although we're doing the opposite right now. But we'll have any overflow, and here I'm particularly thinking potatoes probably ends up being the one that we overflow more often. We'll come out here, and let's make sure I have my recipes updated out here as well. We'll just turn all of the excess into animal feed and send that off to the chickens, who are recovering nicely, by the way. You'll be happy to hear. Because it's all loose goods, everything comes out here. It's this belt. So this is pretty easy, pretty straightforward. And I even think I'm not going to build the farms yet because they take a ton of people. We're going to talk about how to handle that in a moment. I think I'm going to build, let's say, everything but the farms for now. There we go. Where is the other farming outpost going to be? Well, Trace is a decent spot, right? In general, for things where we need space. And there's actually some water out here even, too. Now, we're annihilating this deposit. I very much plan already to do just the tiniest bit of terraforming to connect in here and grab this reservoir as well. Chickens are thirsty. We have only built half of this. As I said, yeah, they're in fact fully recovered, pretty much. That's good. But we're feeding the chickens and all of this set of farms. Check it out. Some canola, some canola. So I don't really want to tax this reservoir pair too much more. This is actually completely underutilized. This groundwater pump is occasionally sending water into this boiler for some steam, for the occasional steam train that comes out here for wood. Like, we're barely using this at all. But there's no room.
So this leads me to where we're going to build the orchard, which is what I guess I'm calling the veggie and fruit greenhouse set. So each of these 4 is just alternating between those 2. It should be roughly 50%. This is mostly just arable land. As we said, it's not particularly well connected to water. It's pipeline distance. We could run a pipeline, but it'd be so awkward. So I kind of like this vibe of having trains run through the forest. And the cool thing about trains, although you do have to square them up on the grid for any sort of crossing, and we need our forestry crew to be able to get to both sides here pretty easily. So we have this section in the center that's aligned on the grid, but it actually handles these sort of long, awkward open space turns way better than a pipe does. A pipe has to be 90 degrees and it goes dut, 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 squares up. It's one of the reasons that it kind of sucks to watch a pipe go up an incline, right? It's not a smooth thing. So if we were going to run a pipe from this reservoir out here, we'd probably go like what? Like up and then over and then up and then over and then up. It would look terrible, wouldn't it? The other thing we could do though would be to drop that water off by train. It's a little extra. Actually, it's a lot extra, but I think it's possible. No, it's possible. So I think what we're gonna do is just smack a couple extra water stations here and then pump some water over and go ahead and have our farming network also have a little bit of water. And I know someone is probably thinking, why don't you just set up some rainwater harvesters out here? Absolutely not. I'm not going to ruin this pristine view with a bunch of big dumb square tarps. No chance. No chance at all. Plus, I want to use this space in the future for the inevitable expansion or 3. So we're doing it. You don't have to agree. You certainly don't have to do it yourself, but that's what I want to do. So that's what we're going to do. So we're gonna, again, build everything but the farms. And why are we doing that? Well, because each farm is 20 workers and we have 15, and these are things that also require workers. So we need to do something about that. And unfortunately, we are out of both settlement or housing 3s to upgrade to 4s and obvious spots to sneak another one in without too much effort. I also don't really want to keep investing and expanding this area knowing that we're right on the edge of, you know, actually being able to move into our new model. So what we could do is try to do some thoughtful pausing or additional upgrades. And we've already unloaded our ship. We've already paused all of the research facilities since we're not really doing much in the way of research. The other sort of big ticket items, I guess, that we could consider pausing are things like vehicle bays where we're not actively upgrading or producing, train depots. I don't know, they kind of add up, but I come back to the single biggest way to save on workers at this stage of the game is to upgrade from Assembly 3 to Assembly 4. And so what I figure we should probably do is find a few spots on the map. Each one of these is 8. If we upgrade it, we can replace it with a building that is twice as good and only takes 2. So if we can actually save on the throughput, we can go from what costs us 16 workers down to 2 workers. So here, not much to be done. These are paused, they're just sort of on the map. But out here, for example, we could upgrade 2 of these and just pause or delete the other 2. Spoiler alert, I think we're just going to pause them because I do see us expanding this for recyclables in the future. But let's upgrade, pause, Unity. And so we go from, what was it, 19, I guess, all the way up now to 47, something like that. Other things are being built in the background, so the math may not check out perfectly, but that'll be a good quick couple of workers. Let's see if we can find some more. Oh yeah, over here, for example, we could upgrade this and pause this. Now, if we upgrade this, then we sort of need to upgrade the other to handle the full throughput, but also, no we don't, because we only really demand 24, so this is fine. We could just do it for fewer workers. So we'll upgrade this as well, and he'll just be active half the time. We have a good amount of headroom on compute and the ability to make more too, so no worries there. Same thing's true over here. So let's say upgrade and pause. Unity is helpful there. And I do think we will, upgrade this one, but not be able to pause. Oops. It's boost, not upgrade. So that'll save us a couple as well. All right, so with that, we are starting to approach the amount of workers that we're going to need for some farming at least. So maybe we'll start, let's start out here. Well, there goes all the Unity I had, but worth it. Again, our trucks are quite busy. Very mad at us lately. So this should be enough once our construction crews can get out to build them. This should be enough to get half of each of those farms up and running. So we'll try to scrounge up some more workers for the others, but this should at least be proof of principle in getting sort of all of this in motion. I think we have everyone. Did I do this already? Everyone's on the right network. Yep, farming network out here. And this also is on the farming network as a result. Over here, where are we? There we are. We're on the farming network out here. Very good. This, of course, still requires manual construction because it's water supply. I do think we could probably offset that with, maybe not really. Maybe one could get paused there. That's not a big deal. At any rate, I'm going to sit back, check out how this is working for our construction crews and troubleshoot whatever we need to, but I will see you shortly when we have an update. Well, as a quick update, found a few more spots to go ahead and save on some workers. Have paused, for example, all of this salt, which is not a ton, but they were barely working at all, and it's 6 a pop, so this actually ended up being like 50. Just sort of pieced it together, industries that we aren't using too much, and have been charging up buffers like this one. We can probably stop boosting that now, and hope, that our fertilizer and water trains can get out there. I did actually queue up another one of these. We might even need another one of these. Let's help our trucks. So let's see. The other thing that we're charging the heck out of is our entire fertilizer production. Sometimes it's working, sometimes it's not, but we are really trying to get this set up as a buffer because each of those new farming spots needs a whole, or will eventually demand an entire 6,000. So it's all good, just sort of chewing through it, churning along in the background. Not too much else to report. Out here we do definitely have our first corn and potato crops, and that's true even though we don't have incredible fertility, right? Fertilizer is, well, it's more than nice to have. It is kind of neat to have, but you do have some function without it. And we have some workers, so I think we're going to go ahead and get these two built as well. And then out here, I think same thing. I guess we can try. The issue with these is that the water is basically just whatever happens to rain. So until we have train delivery of water there, it's going to be, I think, a little bit more painful than our corn and potato setup. At any rate, I like how this is looking, except how thoroughly deforested it is. But it's kind of a fun working forest for the train to come through. I like it. Let me know what you think. Hey, by the way, we have canola out here, which means we are making cooking oil. And if we come over to the bakery, has any arrived yet? No, not yet. Maybe we should do, same as we did with ammonia earlier. It's just across the street. I think maybe we add both stations to the manufacturing network and hope that that triggers the smaller fluids. The worry, of course, is going to be that our manufacturing network tries to run all of the flour over. But let's see. If they get in the way, we'll figure out another solution. But let's keep an eye on it and just see how it works for now. Fun fact, we're like actually dealing with disease for the first time in ages because our medical supplies is still a little intermittent. Again, I don't want to go troubleshooting a production chain that we've already put an expiration date on, so I'm not going to bother yet. We can simply grab some workers here and there. It is a renewable resource in this game. But what is a problem, or will be a problem if we don't do something about it, is this groundwater reservoir is not doing so hot out here. That is, I think, because our chickens are really crushing it. And that's great, good for them, but we need to link up to this other reservoir. So what I'm going to do is grab some of these guys. I really would like to finish this off so we can connect up this bridge and shorten this train path so it doesn't have to go out and around, but that's not an emergency. That has a potential to be. So let's adjust the mining area for this crew and just have them buzz cut right through here. Had to clear them out manually, a little hacky, but that's all right. And they should, now with that crossing, they kind of undermined the path down from last time that they took to get down here. But they should now have access to get out there. And with that, our first cakes are rolling off the line. Very cool. So, of course, canola, sugar, eggs, and finally fruit, all here along with our flour supply. So now we have cake. Pretty cool. Very fun stuff. So I think that means we can cross off the bakery. We've also got both of our new farming outposts sorted out and up to speed even, I would say. Maize and taters is doing good if you don't look at the fertilizer supply, but we certainly have plenty of corn and potatoes being produced out here. And then the orchard doing pretty well as well. Actually has some fertilizer, which is nice, but we are piling up the stockpile here. We have a good amount of water, and it's low-key killing this reservoir, but that's all right. That's what it's there for. We'll deal with it later. Okay, we've run pretty long already though, so that's gonna have to be it for today. I can't believe I thought we'd get twice this much done. We have so many more builds still left to do, not least of which is the actual settlement itself. Well, that's all right though. We'll just get all of this done the next time then, right? We'll absolutely have to get the next settlement built probably before we're even able to supply things like household goods, because we are completely out of workers now. So if you'd like to peek ahead at what these other builds you've been seeing in the background are, but that we haven't yet talked about, as always, the save file is available on our Discord, along with blueprints for the builds that we have completed today. I will warn you though, if you try to play on from this particular save file, fertilizer, water, hydrogen, and fuel gas are all kind of hanging on by a thread, so be careful, you've been warned. We'll probably have to reinforce some of that in the next episode too. Until then though, have a great rest of your day, and bye-bye.